Before we begin, I request everyone to kindly rise for the national anthem.
Hello.
जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविण उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगल दायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
Thank you. Kindly be seated. A very good evening to the honorable dignitaries on the dais and the entire gathering. We are gathered here today for yet another inspiring session under the Distinguished Speaker Series, an initiative envisioned by Professor Prateek Sharma, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Delhi Technological University, to bring thought leaders and experts to share their invaluable insights and experiences with us. To initiate today's session, I would like to request our honorable dignitaries on the dais to kindly illuminate the lamp. Sir, please.
या कुंदेन्दु तुषार हार धवला या शुभ्र वस्त्रावृता या वीण वरदण्ड मण्डितकरा या श्वेत पद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युत शङ्करा प्रभृतिभिर्देवैः सदा वन्दिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेष जाड्यापहा.
Thank you, sir. We would now like to extend floral welcome to our distinguished speaker for the day, Dr. Balakrishna Pisupati, Director, United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, Government of India. We thank you for your kind presence with us today. We are also honored to have with us on the dais Professor Prateek Sharma, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Delhi Technological University, Professor Madhusudan Singh, Registrar, DTU, Professor S. Indu, Dean Digital Education. May I now request Professor Prateek Sharma, Honorable Vice Chancellor, DTU, to kindly deliver the welcome address.
Good evening, all of you. The chief guest of the day and the main speaker, Dr. Balakrishnan, Professor Madhusudan, Professor Indu, my faculty colleagues, students. This is the 5th lecture in the Distinguished Speaker series. And in fact, a few months back, when I met Dr. Balakrishnan, we had a very engaging discussion. And in fact, he is heading the United Nations Environmental Program. And in fact, what caught my imagination was, the concept of, biomimicry that he mentioned. And in fact, I actually, that discussion was quite engaging, I do remember. And in fact, we were talking about, air conditioning systems. And if we actually think in terms of air conditioning, it's highly energy intensive process, if you follow. And in fact, he gave me an example of the termites which make, huge mounds in the desert areas, which Professor O.P. Verma would have definitely seen coming from Rajasthan. And in fact, what he actually narrated me was exactly, in fact, the structurally, if we see the body of the termite, it's very weak. And in fact, the kind of structure that they form, and in fact, they are able to survive in that very hot climatic conditions. So that at that very moment, I thought this is a huge opportunity that, we should actually take a lot of examples from the nature and use in order to provide technological solutions for that. And in fact, because the area was quite close to, say, Department of Biotechnology, and I would acknowledge that Professor Yasha was prompt enough to come up with the details of, what is the scope of biomimicry in the context of a technological institution. And therefore, I felt that this is a great opportunity because we always look for speakers who provide a new perspective and to our, faculty members and students, so that, those ideas may inspire us to actually pick up some problems and translate those into some actionable outputs also, outcomes also. So that was the context that, that very day, this idea came in my mind that, why not have him speak to our faculty and students. And from that, obviously the idea germinated to create a Center for Excellence in Biomimicry. And obviously we are, only IIT Madras has done something in this particular domain in the Indian context, I am saying. Internationally, in fact, Dr. Balakrishnan was very kind enough to volunteer that he will help us in reaching out to, people who are globally working in this particular area. And I thought that this is a good opportunity where the core branches of engineering, especially like, the civil engineering, in fact, I referred this to Professor Avdesh Kumar also, being a structural engineer, also referred to Professor Girish Kumar, so that, something as an idea which can catch their imagination and we can do something in this particular domain. And the preliminary groundwork was, in a very detailed manner, was done by Professor Yasha Hasija. And she did a very nice work in terms of referencing and the organizations which are nationally and globally or, working in this particular area. So, in fact, I have got very limited knowledge based on whatever work she shared with me and my preliminary homework that I had done following my discussion with Dr. Balakrishnan. I thought, let us all listen from the horse's mouth and get ourselves enriched, and probably which may pave way for, doing certain new things at the institution which we are striving to do. And obviously, formally, officially, I would like to announce that we would work to actually creating a Center for Excellence in Biomimicry, because the very purpose of having centers of excellence is this only, to identify the knowledge gap and work in that particular gap area. And through the created knowledge, we disseminate by various means. That is the objective. And I would not stay between the audience and the speaker. And I would profusely thank Dr. Balakrishnan for, very kindly agreeing, to deliver this talk and enrich all of us, with his words of wisdom. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, sir. It is my honor to introduce you all to our speaker for today. Dr. Balakrishna Pisupati is currently the chairman of National Biodiversity Authority based in Chennai at the rank of Secretary to Government of India. Previous to this, he was the head of Biodiversity, Land Law and Governance Program at the United Nations Environment Program based in Nairobi, where he oversaw the biodiversity program portfolio of UNEP, besides serving as the focal point for UNEP biodiversity-related multilateral environmental agreements. He also served as a program coordinator of Biodiplomacy Program at United Nations University, Institute of Advanced Studies, based in Yokohama, Japan, where he developed a series of programs of biodiplomacy and governance. He was the head of Regional Biodiversity Program for Asia at IUCN, the World Conservation Union based in Colombo, Sri Lanka. He has more than 20 years of experience in dealing with issues of conservation, development, policy, and lawmaking, and their implementation at local, national, regional, and global levels. He has published widely and has authored about 80 peer-reviewed research articles and 34 books on various topics related to biodiversity and development. He is a fellow of Lenin Society and Cambridge Commonwealth Trust, UK, visitor at Minju University in Beijing, China, and is a senior visiting fellow of United Nations University, Institute of Advanced Studies, Japan. He has served as an advisor to several governments in the Asia, Pacific, Africa, Latin America, Europe on the issues of conservation and development, and supported establishment of biodiversity programs in countries such as Philippines, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, and Nepal. He served as a lead author for the Global Environment Facility in establishing the Agro-Biodiversity Program portfolio, besides being a part of Biodiversity Task Force under the China Council for International Cooperation on Environment and Development. He holds a PhD in genetics with specialization in plant biotechnology. It is really our honor to have such a renowned person with us today. I request Sir now to kindly address the audience.
Can you put it inside? It's okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, and good afternoon. See, one thing I realized was that when I was being introduced, the opportunities and challenges some of the web-based searches provide to us, because the introduction was quite elaborate. Thank you very much for the introduction. That's almost 10 years old. So, if you pick up information, there is a whole, area of study that is by the sociologists and social scientists. And some of you would have heard of this term called cyberchondria. I don't know how many of you have heard the word cyberchondria. Cyberchondria is a very interesting concept. And this is, most of us actually, are to an extent influenced by cyberchondria. See, today, if you have a headache, well, the first thing we do is to go to Google and then do a quick search. I have a headache, what is the problem? So then WebMD or somebody will sort of ask you a couple of questions, they'll give you some information, and in about 5 minutes you have decided that you have a brain tumor. So a lot of time, the web-based information is very useful, but you also need to have a bit of a ground truthing. That's what a lot of people say. We use ChatGPT a lot. And the other day I was reading an article, and somebody said that my research paper was cited by another researcher, and then I realized that that entire citation actually was generated by ChatGPT, because I never wrote that kind of an article or in any journal. So certainly technology and science is something which is going to be extremely useful for us, but we also need to be a little more careful on how to use some of those technology. So let me first start by thanking Professor Pratik Sharma for the invitation, and to the university for providing a platform to share some ideas, some insights into this very interesting and exciting area of study, more relevant to a lot of you. We are looking at not just biodiversity, not just environment, not just nature, but how some of the elements of nature could potentially inspire a lot of you, especially those who work in technology, those who work in engineering, in science. When I say science, it's just not natural sciences, but it's also social sciences elements of it. But for me, it's a very interesting opportunity because coming from the United Nations, where I've been associated for more than 20 years, you don't get much of an opportunity to interact with the academic community. We do get, and especially I'm trying to spend as much of time as possible with academia, but then a lot of time we don't get an opportunity because most of our conversations are with policymakers, decision makers, ministers and others. But then a lot of decision making or policy making that we do has to be grounded in science and has to be based on certain assessments that provide us a bit of a cue, a bit of information, a bit of insight to actually understand what a policy should look like. We can't develop any policy, whether it is a national government policy or an international policy or policies that we largely focus on in the United Nations, without science. Science is very fundamental to a lot of decision making. Today we talk of climate change. Many of you would have heard about the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. How do the 196 countries come together to make a decision on what to do about climate change? It's based on science. Without science, we will not be able to make policies. So that way, I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to share a few thoughts. But more than that, I was quite excited to actually listen to Professor Sharma mentioning about the creation of a center. Because this is where, coming from a policy perspective, coming from UN, we have to spend years, if not months, to make a decision to do something. But when it comes to academia and academic community, you have something which a lot of us do not have in the policy making community called freedom. So the speed with which you actually made a decision to establish a center is a very good indication where that academic freedom is something which every one of us need to cherish, every one of us need to actually celebrate. So what I'm going to do in the next 30 minutes or so is to show you a little bit of a perspective on what is meant by this area of study called biomimicry. I don't know how many of you have heard of this term before, but very simply put, it is nothing but mimicking nature. To an extent, nature provides us a lot of inspiration. So this entire presentation is to give you a little bit of a perspective of what those inspiring stories that we can learn from nature. And to an extent, if not all of them, several of them, perhaps you may be able to relate to your own work. And that's why I have actually carefully curated a little bit of information which probably is relevant to some of your work. And certainly, if you are establishing, which you have announced, some of these elements are going to be quite exciting. Because biomimicry is again one discipline that is 100% transdisciplinary in nature. And that's what is so special and so very interesting about this area of work. Can I have the next slide, please? Anyway, have a look at those three pictures, and I'll sort of mention about what these are related to in my last slide. Next one, please. Can I use it? No, you can? Okay, so you'll be able to help? Okay, wonderful, thank you. So this actually was a report that was done a few years ago by the World Economic Council. Many of you have heard every year in February, there is what is called the World Economic Forum that happens in Davos in Switzerland, where we have the best of minds, both in terms of science, technology, investors, politicians, decision makers come together to discuss about where the world is going in terms of technology, what are the opportunities, what are the risks, and all of it. So this particular report that was launched about 3 years ago actually looks at 2025. And about 3 years ago, they actually mentioned that there are 17 different ways in which technology will change the world by 2025. But the broad areas of that work are related to artificial intelligence, e-commerce, green economy, intelligent vehicles, Internet of Things, smart robots. Actually, all of us actually today are living through that transition. Every one of them is something which is already with us. We are either impacted by that, we are researching on them, and we are trying to apply all of these technologies in our day-to-day lives one way or another. The next one. Thank you. So when you're looking at development, when you're looking at sustainable development, which again is a phrase probably you've heard a number of times, we always talk of several dimensions of development. We call them as capitals. We have the human capital, we have the social capital, we have the physical capital, we also have the financial capital. But there is another capital which to an extent gets missed out in most of the conversations related to development, and that is what is called the natural capital. So today globally, a lot of effort is being put to understand what is this natural capital we are talking about, and how do we make use of realizing the potential of natural capital for development. When I say development, social development, economic development, and also environmental development. So a large amount of focus is going into understanding natural capital, and that is where a number of the issues that are related to these discussions are going to be very relevant. Next one. But when you talk of nature, you are talking of living things. The microbes, the plants, the animals, the birds, the creatures in the sea, on the land. And we are looking at astonishing numbers of diversity that is existing in the world today. And as you can see from the numbers there, a large part of that diversity is something which we do not even know. We have not even described them. We have not even named them. And if you look at the numbers, it's only 1.7 to 2 million species that are described, cutting across all the living forms. But then the available or the existing life forms amounts to 100 million, and they are still not described. And the reason why that particular number is important is today, if you talk of inventions in the context of, for example, healthcare, I don't know how many picked up in the social media. Just a few days ago, there was a very interesting article that said, because one of the big problems we have today is what is called the antimicrobial resistance. Because we consume, antibiotics so very rampantly, our resistance level to a number of antibiotics is growing by bounds. So today we are in a situation where the healthcare professionals are challenged by unable to find antibiotics to treat a number of problems we have. And there is a whole set of global research that goes on what is called antimicrobial resistance, or AMR. And very interestingly, what happened was that researchers have found in a kind of a backyard dump of another researcher, a microbe, when they were cleaning it up, they actually found a very interesting microbial structure there, and then they did some research and realized that that particular microbe is producing an antibiotic which is the most potent antibiotic to deal with antimicrobial resistance today. So essentially the reason I gave you that example was the diversity that is out there which is not yet known are going to be the magic bullets for a lot of issues that we would like to solve currently and also into the future. The next one. So when we talk of nature, when we talk of biodiversity, we relate it to a number of different things, for development, for innovation, for livelihoods, and also for our future. That's the reason why we are talking about environment, we are talking about biodiversity. The next one, please. But are we talking about these in the context of our interest to look at the beauty of nature around us? No. The economic elements or the economic potential of that particular nature or biodiversity around us is enormous. Look at some of those numbers that are there. Today, nature-based contributions to economy is a significant % of the GDP in many, many countries. Take for example, the anti-cancer drugs. 42% of the anti-cancer drugs that are used today comes from nature-based or plant-based sources. We are looking at not just that in the economic context, but also in the employability concept. 60 million work years, with 80% of the employment that is being generated actually comes from nature-based elements or nature-based contributions. The next one. And this is a very interesting quote, which certainly will relate to a lot of things that I'm going to say about nature and its contribution to innovations that we are talking about. This is a very famous quote from Leonardo da Vinci. And if you look at the element of it, which is the last part of it, it says that in nature, inventions is nothing is wanting and nothing is superfluous. And that to an extent captures the overall essence of the contribution of nature in terms of our day-to-day existence and also for future development. The next one. So how do we get inspired from nature? And that's what biomimicry is all about. It's actually not a new area of science or new area of application. It has been there with us for many, many years. But what has changed was that being a kind of approach which is more at a conceptual stage where people were looking at a proof of concept. Today, biomimicry is a multi-billion-dollar industry in terms of enterprises that are currently being developed. And I'll give you a few examples of them, and you'll be surprised that today the innovations that are being carried out by school children across the world related to biomimicry is astonishing. The next one. And this actually is 3.8 billion plus years of innovation in the nature. None of it actually happened overnight. So it's all innovation in the making that actually got consolidated and being presented to us today. I'm going to give you a few examples so that you will relate to what this biomimicry is all about. I'm sure many of you would recognize that particular picture there. It's a very simple thing, Velcro, that we use. Velcro is now, ubiquitous. I mean, there's so many applications of Velcro today. But do you know what actually inspired the person who actually invented Velcro? The next one. That very simple seed. So the structural element of how this seed sticks to plants, to animals, to human beings, to our sort of dresses and all, was actually the starting point or the inspiration for this person who actually invented Velcro. And today, the applications of Velcro is so very important in our lives. The next one. That actually is a very interesting shopping mall in a country called Zimbabwe, which is in southern Africa. And Zimbabwe actually constructed this mall called Eastgate Mall. But what is interesting about this particular building is that this is one building where they actually constructed the building, the next one, mimicking termite mounds. Termites, as you know, are very interesting insects, but they are also very fragile insects. They don't have the thick skin like other insects have, the cuticle, as we call it. But then people actually who were observing termites realized that they sort of thrive and live in very harsh environments, especially the temperature element of it. And somebody actually did a kind of a vertical transect of the mound. And he found that the way the termites construct their air vents provide an opportunity for the air that enters the mound to actually cool the air naturally. So the difference between external temperature and the temperature within the mound is several degrees less. And this is done by a very simple thing of constructing the air vents by the termites. So what he did was that the structural engineering element of it he applied to actually construct that building in Zimbabwe, where they were able to reduce the use of heating and cooling by mimicking the natural air vents from a termite mound. And today, if we are going to be talking in terms of Government of India's priority as we are here on the 9th of April, the biggest challenge for policymakers today is how do we deal with heating? And already we've sort of seen that the heat wave is stuck and we are going to be having very sort of hot days. We're already touching 42 degrees here. The requirements of energy and our inability to cope up with the heat is something which is going to be extremely important. So think of a situation that the structural elements, the design of buildings in the future could actually mimic termites. So it's a combination of innovation, it's a combination of creativity, it's also a combination of sustainability. So the inspiration comes from nature. The next one. Yes, no, the previous one. The picture on the top is what is called a Shinkansen. You know, it's a Japanese term for the high-speed bullet trains in Japan. And everybody actually vies to get that. In India is also building its own bullet train. But how many of you know that the entire design, the concept, the structural elements of designing that particular the engine or the front part of the Shinkansen actually was inspired by Kingfisher? It's just not about the flight, but it is also about the way it is able to actually overcome the speed and the resistance barrier when Kingfisher moves so very swiftly in the air. So the entire study of how a Kingfisher is able to deal with reducing the resistance when it is diving especially and also moving inspired the engineers to actually construct the Shinkansen in Japan. The next one. I don't know how many of you have read or heard about this. The world's strongest material, which is better than a bulletproof jacket, actually is the silk of spider. And today, the material science students, scientists, researchers actually have mimicked the chemical and the structural properties of the spiders to make one of the strongest buildings, strongest structural material that actually we have ever known. How many of us, we see spiders all the time and we see cobwebs all over. The kind of value of them. So certainly this is something which is inspired by the nature. Next one. Very old technology, sonar. You know, we've used it in engineering, we know a lot of it about sonar. But you know what inspired the entire technology of sonar when it was invented, when it was created? Next one. From the bats. Because they are the first, or they are the best ones to actually use sonars in terms of navigation. So the entire technology was inspired by bats in terms of how they were able to move without hitting, in terms of a whole range of technological element of understanding the behavior and the lifestyle of a bat that resulted in a number of applications of sonar. The next one. Wind turbines. I mean, today renewable energy is a big ticket issue for many countries. But you know, the best possible wind turbine designs is inspired by the next one, by what's called next one, the humpback whale. Today, the best wind turbines, the construction or this entire technology related to designing and structural elements of wind turbine actually is inspired by the humpback whale in terms of their ability to actually reduce resistance when they move and then when they jump. So certainly a few examples, and today if you do the Google search, you will actually end up looking at not just hundreds but hundreds of examples of such elements where today's science and technology is learning from nature, is being inspired by nature. Next one. A lot of us know hippopotamus, hippos. But how many of us know today most of the cosmetic companies are investing millions of dollars in research to actually develop cosmetics based on the hippo sweat, to inspire waterproof sun lotion that also has antiseptic properties, it also has insect repellent property and antifungal property. I mean, when you see a hippo, we only sort of see the volume of that particular animal and perhaps get sort of so thrilled when it opens the mouth, all of it. But there is a whole range of a multi-million-dollar industry research that is going on to actually understand how hippo is able to have in its sweat the chemical properties that can deal with all of them. Currently, there is nothing in the market that does all the functions, being a sun lotion, being antifungal, being antibacterial, and being antiseptic and insect repellent. But hippos actually have found how to deal with it. The next one, please. A lot of us do a lot of research on solar cells. And this actually is a very, very inspiring story, because in Amazon forest, in a particular place, because of the nature of the forest and the density of the forest, or the denseness of the forest, sunlight actually gets into that particular forest only one day a year. And still, plants survive. So somebody was so thrilled to see how is that in the absence of sunlight, these plants are able to synthesize the photosynthesis elements of a chlorophyll. The result of it is that somebody actually did research on a plant called Cochia cucae, which actually was one of the very important precursors to actually inspire the way the entire solar cells and solar batteries are being done. A single unknown, unspoken, ignored plant from a remote Amazon is helping the whole solar industry in terms of identifying the best way that they can capture the solar energy from the sun coming for one day, but was able to use it for 364 days. The next one. It's again another work related to lung-inspired fuel cells. A lot of us work on fuel cells. A whole range of research that had gone on how to deal with fuel cells, where the understanding of lungs were the precursors for designing some of the fuel cells. The next one. And this is a very interesting paper that appeared in a research article on what is called the damage-tolerant material design motif derived from asymmetrical rotation. Because if it is asymmetrical rotation, the natural phenomena is for things to break. But nature, especially if you look at an ant, you never see an ant with a broken head. The structural element of it is something which is so inspiring that you have a whole branch of science that looks at the element of asymmetrical rotation, learning from nature on how we can design a number of interventions that can overcome the problem of material design today. The next one. Rainwater harvesting, I was just mentioning it a few minutes ago. Today the biggest problem is water. We recycle water, we have reverse osmosis, salt water based expensive, environmentally not very friendly. So somebody who was doing some research in the Namibia desert, Namib desert is one of the driest areas of the planet. Very little water, very little rainfall. They actually found that the beetles that actually occur in this desert were able to actually capture water and store it on their skins. And they didn't know where the water actually had come from because there was no rain, there are no plants. How is this beetle able to deal with this? And then the research actually indicated that this beetle has an ability through its skin and also the structural element of the skin to capture water droplets from the moisture, whatever is the limited moisture available in the air. And this technology of capturing water from air is something like, for example, is very, very common and prevalent in India. I don't know how many of you have heard of this. It's now being used very, very commonly in India. So gone are the days we have to look at recycling through reverse osmosis, spend a lot of money and all. So today we have a technology. But the critical element of a lot of these technological interventions are the transition from being very creative to being very innovative. Remember, creation is something which is inspired by nature. But unless investments go into the creativity to scale it up, to make it into enterprise development, to make it into a business, to find a market for it, that's where the innovation parts of it come. So the transition between creativity and innovation is something which, to an extent, a lot of people are struggling. And that's where a center like this should focus on. Not just essentially to look at creations, which is most welcome, but how can you scale up? How can you invest in scaling up the creativity to the innovation part of it? Synthetic biology, I don't know how many of you have heard of this term called synthetic biology. Today it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And synthetic biology today is applied in all these areas of research, ranging from health sciences to environmental management to biotechnology to engineering to biology to bioinformatics. The next one. And that's the economic potential of this particular technology or this particular suite of technologies. The market analysis just in about between 2018 to 2026, which is expected to be 6 billion to 62.8 billion, a 10 times increase with an annual compounded growth rate of approximately 33.9%. A lot of synthetic biology research today, the core ideas or the core opportunities comes from nature. And for those of you who are familiar with biotechnology, would understand today the very basic requirement for you to do biotechnology is to use a particular chemical reaction called polymerase chain reaction. There is nothing that happens without PCR. And the entire PCR is enabled by one particular enzyme, polymerase, that actually was discovered and further purified and invented, and the inventor got a Nobel Prize in chemistry for his invention. So today we are talking of not just inspired by nature for the sake of being inspired, but we are looking at some of it in the context of billions of dollars of markets that actually are being done. And these are being used in so many different areas of work, for enzyme production, for cloning, for looking at nucleic acids, and also for creating new and novel organisms. So today the science is something which is inspiring nature, supporting nature. The entire issue of living interface between synthetic biology and biomaterial design is something which actually is transforming the way we look at biology, genetic engineering, biotechnology in the coming days. It's already sort of changed significantly. But then, are we talking of all of it only in terms of technology, structural elements of it? No. Nature is inspiring us to deal with our management problems also. And I've just got one example of the slide there, where I've given 3 examples of how today's management problems are being solved by learning from nature. There's a whole element of research called bucket brigade algorithm. I'm sure some of you would have heard about that. That entire thing is actually designed to solve the apportionment of credit that is to be provided when you're looking at a sequence of different things that are happening. And this entire algorithm actually on the bucket brigade is something which the scientists have learned from observing ants and ants' behavior. And today the application of the algorithm is something which is almost universal. It's used almost in every sphere of our life. Self-organizing behavior algorithm of ant colonies is what is driving the driverless cars and its related technology. The entire technological intervention on how to manage, when you see a particular, traffic pattern that is before you in driverless cars, that entire technology comes from how ants manage themselves. Have you seen ants colliding to each other? Have you seen ants going all over the place? They actually, in spite of them running around in thousands, it's very well organized. So today, the management of crowds, the management of people, the management of complex situations, the inspiration is coming from ants. And the last part of it is the decision mechanism of bees when they want to find a new location for the hive to settle down, which is based on interdependence of the decision makers, but then the independence in choice. And today in management science, this is something which actually is driving a lot of our decisions in terms of how do we actually maximize the interplay between interdependence of decision makers and independence in the choice. In social sciences today, this is a major area of research and focus. So there are many approaches. Biomimicry is one of them. There can be bio-inspiration. You may be inspired by nature, biomimetics, nature-based solutions. Today, a lot of it is something which is really receiving a lot of attention. So the focus of all of this intervention is the form, the process, and the system. So that is where the whole of the focus actually is looking at. So today, if we are going to be looking at biomimicry from an economic perspective, it is expected by 2030, the field could account for 425 billion US GDP and 1.6 trillion of total global output. So this is not something which we want to focus on because we are interested or we love nature. We are interested in this because there is a huge entrepreneurial opportunity and prosperity perspective. So the eco-innovation applications are all over the place. Material science, engineering, social sciences, environmental management is being used so very widely and so very rampantly today. There is a whole set of research and publications that happen in the context of material science looking at bioinnovation. The bio-inspired material science looking at spectroscopy, to heart valve, to polymers, to self-healing, self-cleaning structures. Today, the biggest investment of the largest cement manufacturer, Holcim, is actually based on the last bit of it, to create cement that can self-heal so that there is no need for repairs and stuff like that to come. So, who are actually working on it? All of those stakeholders are working on it. We have scientists and researchers, we have policymakers, we have designers, but most importantly, today biomimicry, bioinnovation is something which is catching the imagination of school children. The next one. And these four, you may not be able to read all the details of it, but again you can Google it and see it, are some examples. Today there is an annual competition, global competition that happens where biomimicry applications are requested or required from students to present. And I was just mentioning that the last entry, one of the most successful entry, was a school, set of school children who designed the best possible flood prevention mechanism where they observed and combined nature-inspired solutions from 6 different aspects of it to come together. So it is no more a technology-intensive area of study. It is no more a science-intensive area of study. What we require is a little bit of an opportunity, a bit of an inspiration, and a bit of a support. And if the center can do it, certainly nothing like that. Next one. And this is how the entire the technology has evolved. Billions of years to what we are seeing today. None of these have evolved over hundreds of years or thousands of years. These are billions of years of evolution. But we are able to capture that in a matter of decades to translate that potential into something which is real so very quickly thanks to science, technology, and innovation. And I just wanted to also present this. There is a very interesting code, kind of index that is being used called the Da Vinci Index. So the Da Vinci Index is actually is an index that measures the innovations that are happening. And what you see on the screen is actually a very interesting graph that looks at Da Vinci Index that has increased 12-fold since 2000. But just in China alone, it has increased 100-fold since since the year 2000. So which means that the investments that are going into biomimicry, the investments that are going into nature-inspired solutions for the day-to-day problems and enterprise development is so very advanced in a country like China. The next one. So we use all of it in the context of a number of innovations: climate change, biodiversity, health, water security, clean air, weather disaster predictions. So a lot of these combined with the available technological interventions, including things like artificial intelligence, is something which really is providing us enormous amounts of opportunities. So where we are looking at research and development, to grants, to patents, to collaborations, to citizen science. And there is a whole journal that actually is dedicated, not just one, but several journals that actually are being dedicated to actually research in some of these areas of work. What you see on the screen are not pictures of animals. These actually are photographs of some orchids. And this is just a sample. If again you can do a Google image search, that is what is nature. I mean, if you see, some of those pictures, especially the last one that looks like a bird, it's not a bird, it's just an orchid. So nature is so very beautiful. We still have not understood nature. We still have not explored nature. But nature is offering us so many things. So what is needed is that we should just go and discover nature. But not just for the aesthetics part of it, but also for getting inspired by nature in terms of solving our day-to-day problems. Thank you very much. Have any questions? Yes.
Thanks for the great session, sir.
Let me come. No, I'll give it to you. Yes. No, I can come there. It's much easier.
I'm coming.
No. It's okay.
Hello. It was a great session, sir. And many aspects we have covered. And one more aspect I would like to quote here. So, from sustainability point of view, most of the things that we make use in our life, they belong to two categories. Either it is naturally grown, naturally developed, or it is fabricated or manufactured. Two categories. So very clearly, if you see there are many aspects, it's okay. But from sustainability point of view, all the natural processes, naturally grown things, their degradation is very fast. When its purpose is lost, within a days or hours, it's okay, it's gone. We can take example of, let's human person, it may be a rich person, very great person, a poor person, the person who would have been involved in many activities, he would have done great things. But when he's died, the same day he is fully decomposed. But the things that we create, fabricate, manufacture, it takes years. Even a single needle takes lot much time. It's decomposition, degradation. So from sustainability point of view also, we also need to set these guidelines when we are manufacturing or creating something. So how fast it is going to degrade. That will be a great thing from sustainability point of view. Thanks.
You're right, because nature always, has an ability to, deal with the elements. See, sustainability is more a recent word. No? We've sort of coined it, we've been using it. But then, our ancestors for millennia actually were living a lifestyle which is, again, supported by natural processes, natural products, natural phenomena kind of a thing. But the human-led interventions are also important because you can't completely different. I mean, you can't ignore the man-made elements of innovations because they are required. But then, how do we balance? So, which is also important. For example, the inventor of DDT got a Nobel Prize in chemistry. And that was called the super chemical, the magic bullet. So many, terms were used. But then today, we know that's one of the worst chemicals to have been synthesized. 5th of June is World Environment Day. And the theme for this year's World Environment Day is End Plastic Pollution. And one of the tagline, as we are now trying to push, is called Detox Plastic Addiction. We got so addicted to plastic, we can't imagine our day-to-day lives without plastics. The dependence of it. So these are two random, examples of the man-made elements of inventions or innovations. But there are thousands that actually are very, very helpful also. So what is important is how do we balance? But you're right, nature-based solutions are always sustainable. You don't have to do research. It's always sustainable. Thank you. Yes, sir. That's okay, that's okay. Okay.
I think along with self-decomposable systems, we also need to develop the self-healing systems inspired from nature. Because in nature, we'll find whether it is plants, whether it is animals, they have self-healing properties. So what machines we are making we can make them, they will be treating themselves together, learning from the
Absolutely.
nature. Also, like plastic problem, many of us are working for developing the biodecomposable plastics. That will be much more helpful. Definitely, one has to think where we need systems which will require very long life and where we need the systems that should be decomposed fast. So, plastic is a very marvelous innovation, but we have to use where we have to use that we have to decide
Absolutely.
learning from the nature.
Again, I mean, all the 3 points are very relevant. Thank you. Any further questions, comments?
Good evening, sir. In my opinion, to learn new things is very important, but apply the existing thing is also very important. Like in our country, India, many people are sleeping on roads. Is it because of lack of technology or is it because of lack of financial system? So basically it is not because of lack of technology. We have enough technology. We can build millions home in 1 year, but it is because of financial mismanagement. So we should think that what man has developed, that man has developed currency. Many people don't understand what is the role of currency in the society, which is leading to a lot of mismanagement at the natural level within the national boundaries, like what is happening because of the tariff war. Lot of world is in trouble. But how to use the national resources for national purpose? So that's point which I wanted to bring into notice.
No,
Thank
fair,
you.
fair point, fair point. I mean, it's not resources, but where do you deploy the resource? And also the volume of resources. Yes, any other question, comment? None from the students?
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah, yes.
How is this biomimicry field different from the bio-inspired algorithms which you are using for optimization? Is it different or is it extension?
It's an extension.
So how more can
So
we...
algorithms are more an application of the behavior. So when you're looking at the algorithm to look at, driverless cars, self-driving cars, the inspiration comes from, for example, the movement of ants. So you learn from it and you apply it in the context of an algorithm that helps your the vehicle, the automobile to start moving. Right? Okay. Looks like another question. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir, for this wonderful session and also the very nice audience having lots of questions. So after this lecture, we can say certainly, yes, nature is fun in even far more dimensions than what we can think about, and so is biomimicry. It is really an interesting session. Now I would like to request Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, to kindly felicitate Dr. Balakrishna Pisupati, our distinguished speaker of DTU lecture series. Thank you, sir, for taking the time to be with us today. May I now request Professor S. Indu ma'am, Dean Digital Education, to deliver vote of thanks.
Distinguished Speaker of the Day, Dr. Balakrishna Pisupati, Professor Pradeep Sharma, Honorable Vice Chancellor of DTU, Professor Mansoor Singh, Registrar DTU, all Deans, Head of various departments, distinguished faculty members and my dear students. It is indeed a great privilege for me to extend a heartfelt vote of thanks on behalf of Delhi Technological University for the insightful and thought-provoking address by Dr. Balakrishna Pisupati, Head United Nations Environment Policy, India. Sir, your deep insights into the environmental governance, sustainable development, and policy implementation have not only enlightened us, but have also inspired us to reflect more deeply on our responsibilities as educators, researchers, and citizens of this planet. Your experience across national and international platforms are your commitment to biodiversity and environmental sustainability resonate with the vision we hope to inculcate among our students and stakeholders. On behalf of DTU, I would like to extend a heartfelt gratitude to you, sir, for sparing your valuable time and gracing us with your presence and wisdom. Thank you, sir. I extend my sincere thanks to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Prateek Sharma, who has been guiding force in fostering an ecosystem for technological advancements for enhancing research in Delhi Technological University. Also, I would like to express our sincere thanks to Professor Madhusudan Singh, Registrar of DTU. A special thanks to our organizing committee, Professor S.C. Sharma, Professor Ram Singh, Professor Anil Singh Parihar, Dr. Deepika, Dr. Trasha, Dr. Sumit, and all staff of engineering cell for ensuring the smooth execution of this session. To all participants, faculty, students, and professionals, your keen engagement and enthusiasm make such events truly meaningful. Your active participation ensures that the knowledge shared today does not remain just as a discussion but translates into actionable steps. Once again, a big thank you to Dr. Balakrishna Pisupati for sparing his valuable time to guide and inspire us. We look forward to future interactions and collaborations in this domain. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. As we draw today's session to a close, we hope that the upcoming lectures in this distinguished speaker series will continue to broaden our perspectives and make us learn more. With these words, I invite you all to join for high tea outside the auditorium. Thank you.